On October 8, 2018, Hurricane Michael underwent a 48-hour rapid intensification period where it went from a Category 1 hurricane to a Category 4 hurricane. By landfall on October 10, 2018 at 12:30 p.m. Central Time, Hurricane Michael was an unprecedented for the region Category 5 hurricane, making landfall near Tyndall Air Force Base, Florida. Hurricane Michael was the strongest hurricane in recorded history to make landfall on the Florida Panhandle. Landing with sustained winds of 161 miles per hour and a minimum pressure of 919 millibars, the storm was the fourth most powerful hurricane to hit the United States, spreading devastation far inland through many counties in northwestern Florida, from Bay County, Gulf County, Calhoun County, even through Jackson County and Leon County, where the state capital is located. Hurricane Michael was unique in that it maintained its major hurricane status all the way through the Florida-Georgia state line. As it entered Seminole County, Georgia, it was still a strong Category 3 hurricane. Across northwestern Florida and into the state of Georgia, Hurricane Michael was responsible for $25 billion in damages. These are the 31 voices of Hurricane Michael, representing the many unique experiences and perspectives of the community members who endured the storm and its impacts. Voices of hope, empathy, pain, lessons learned, grit, determination, and extensive insight into one of the most catastrophic hurricane seasons the Florida Panhandle has ever encountered. I'm meteorologist Melissa Thomas, and allow me to introduce you to
Good afternoon. I'm meteorologist Melissa Thomas here speaking today with Mike Creel, who is helping me with Hurricane Michael project called Hurricane Michael's Voices. And today he is a voice of Hurricane Michael, and he's here to share with us his experiences pre, through, and post Hurricane Michael, and what nuances he had to deal with that maybe some of you will identify with down the road, and maybe we can be a helping voice out there. But first, let's start with how Mr. Creel felt Panama City was home to him.
Okay, Panama City was indeed home. I was born here in 1952 in Lisenby Hospital. Lisenby Hospital is now Lisenby Retirement Home. So I don't know if I'm going to go back out through Lisenby Hospital, but that's where I began my life here. My parents lived in Highland Park, just a couple of blocks away from the Highland Park Baptist Church. That's where I grew up. I lived there until I eventually graduated from high school and joined the Air Force and moved away to seek my career.
And how long were you in the Air Force for?
I was in the Air Force a little over 22 years, but I took a 2.5-year break in the middle of that. I was enlisted for the first 8.5 years, went back to school at Florida State University, got a degree in the commission, and went back in. That's right. Exactly.
Yeah. So pre-military career, you did have a special someone, correct?
Exactly, yeah. As a senior at Rutherford High School, I was president of the high school choir, and my job was to help maintain order in the classroom, take names of folks that were talking, and we got this gorgeous new girl transfer in from Bay High School with beautiful blue eyes and dimples as deep as the world, and she was talking in class her very first day. So I spotted her and went to her and told her, "You're not allowed to talk in class. I'm going to have your name and your phone number." So she was confused by the phone number part, but I insisted, and she gave it to me, and I used that to call her up and ask for our very first date. So we went out the following Friday on our first date. Yeah, 16 years old. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you took this pretty girl on a date in high school, and here.
We went. Our first date was to a high school football game. She had never been to a high school football game before. And she wore the wrong school's colors. She wore the colors of the other school we were playing. I think it was Choctawhatchee High School, as a matter of fact. And she remembered that. It bothered her the entire game because she noticed as soon as we got there.
Yep.
I didn't notice until she told me about it later because I was taken with her. She had gorgeous, sparkly blue eyes. Exactly right.
Not what she was wearing.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. And but she told me about it. We left the game and went to a high school dance afterwards. And she said she apologized for wearing the wrong colors. And I had not noticed that. But I've not forgotten it since either.
No, that makes for a great story. Post
exactly.
game. So you enlisted in the military? Did you do that while you were dating her? Did you guys?
No, I graduated from high school a year ahead of her.
Yeah.
So I started Gulf Coast Community College in Gulf Coast College now, and took classes out there and worked part-time jobs waiting for her to graduate, because we both committed to one another. We both graduated from high school before we got married. We also committed to both sets of parents we would do that, so they were a little bit insistent about that.
Oh.
So we dated here for a little over a year and a half. And when she graduated, then a couple of weeks later after her graduation, we got married. And I enlisted in the Air Force about 6 months later. She had some health issues, and I'd heard that the military would help pay for medical care. And Vietnam was going on at the time, and I'd kind of felt a sense of calling anyway.
Yeah.
So I enlisted in the Air Force, and we left home and pursued an Air Force career.
My father was in the Air Force for 20 years, so I'd go ahead and just thank you on his behalf.
Thank you so much.
Brother.
That means a lot. Those of us that were in there in Vietnam didn't get a thank you very much, and I'm glad to see that has changed, because my son is now a soldier, and it's gratifying to me to see the attitude has changed. So thank you.
Yes. And so 2018 then, hurricane seasons rolled around. How are you feeling leading up to Hurricane Michael that year? I mean,
Well,
did you feel prepared for the season?
We felt prepared in a sense. My wife has had multiple forms of cancer, and she had chemotherapy and radiation, and the effects of the chemotherapy particularly caused her bone structure to get very weak. So the vertebrae in her back have been breaking down, and from April until October, when the storm hit, she had 3 major spinal fusion surgeries. And in between surgery 2 and surgery 3, she developed pulmonary embolisms in both lungs, and came very close to dying. So we were more concerned with her health issues, quite frankly, than we were about the storm.
You have bigger fish to fry.
Yeah, exactly. When we started hearing about the storm, though, she had just had her 3rd surgery about 11 days prior to the storm making landfall. So she had a very large incision in her back over her spine. And it had not healed yet, it had not closed. So we called and spoke to the doctor. I think the doctor may be the PA, and asked about evacuation, whether we should do it. And they actually advised us against it, because her spine wasn't healed yet, and they didn't want her sitting up for too long. They were afraid of damaging the work that they had done.
Now, this is something I don't think many people consider in storm situations, where get up and evacuate is not an option for everybody. It's not that simple in some cases, and this is a very good example of that.
Right, that's correct.
I really appreciate you sharing it.
That's correct. It's something that I had never even considered. There was either evacuate or don't evacuate, and I guess I was like most people. I assumed that people chose not to evacuate, and
It's not always the case.
Probably would not have evacuated, I will say, because I'm a Panama City native. But we didn't really have the option. So we stayed through the storm to protect her, and it turned out that the hurricane has a lot of ways to get you that you don't think of.
Very indirect.
Very indirect, that's right. So we were at home when the storm hit. Now, as far as preparation, years before, in fact, when we bought the house, I'd gone out and gone a little bit overboard, and I cut plywood to fit every single window, and I had a foolproof system to board up the home should we ever need to. And I'd even practiced it once before to make sure everything would work the way it was supposed to. So we felt prepared from that aspect. We had stockpiled food and lots of water, and I'd frozen gallon milk jugs of ice. I must have had 20 or 30 of those. So we weren't really afraid. We knew with the storm hit, we'd probably lose power, and we'd probably need some way to keep the food cold for a period of time, but we were thinking days. We felt as prepared as we could be, and our concern really was about, we're going to lose air conditioning for 2 or 3 days, and it's going to be miserable for her because she's still in post-surgical recovery period.
So, in a sense, you could say what ended up actually unfolding post-storm was a surprise.
Post-storm was a surprise. During the storm, my foolproof system, at the last moment, I made a change to it.
Oh no.
Yeah, I could have boarded up 100% of all the windows and doors, but at the last moment, we decided we wanted a little bit of daylight coming in and a little bit of visibility to see what was going on. So I left a 14-inch strip of window unboarded in our living room window that actually overlooks our backyard and our pool.
Yeah.
So we actually took turns standing on a stool looking at the top 14 inches and watching our neighborhood be destroyed. That was a very sobering thing. We watched roofs come off. We watched a lot of things that were in people's backyards, but also things like a small boat be rolled around by the hurricane. And we watched pine trees, massive pine trees being snapped like twigs. So we realized the gravity of what was going on. We saw our 330 feet of fence all get blown down. We had a shed in our backyard that I'd gone to great pains to lock the doors. I even put zip ties on the door because I was afraid the storm might blow the doors open. And I will say,
zip ties is a good idea.
Zip ties worked great. The doors were still together the last time I saw the building as it went over the top of the pine trees. And we have never found any piece of that building. And it was about 50 feet over the tops of a mature pine forest the last time I saw it.
The building you were in?
No, the building that I had zip tied the doors together. That was a storage building. We had, I think, 12 40-pound bags of pool salt inside and a lot of 5-gallon buckets of pool chemicals, things that are very heavy, were inside. Never found any trace of those either.
Really? Wow.
I assume it stayed inside for some distance, but we never found anything. And we had another storage bin that wasn't quite that large, but I had reinforced it with a lot of heavy things around it, and that was also completely gone. The only thing that was left out of all that was a broom, and the broom was still standing in the corner. The lightest thing could possibly have been. It was undisturbed. It was still there.
That is actually a recurring theme I'm noticing, is that just how in awe most people are, and including myself looking at pictures, at what the wind chooses to touch and what the wind chooses to leave alone when it's whipping around. It's like just some amazing nuances to damage in small vicinities.
Exactly. It's hard to describe to people that haven't been through something like that. The fence that I mentioned, I found shingles that were embedded like a meat cleaver through the boards in the fence. So it was strong enough to do that, but for some reason it left that broom alone. But we watched that. We went through the storm together, and there was a point at which the storm was probably at its peak, and we actually could feel the glass in the windows bowing inwards, and it felt like they were moving an inch or two. I don't really know. It just in the time it felt like they were bowing a lot, but we realized the glass was probably going to break, so we got away from that and went to a different room. And then the wind subsided. We never did have a window break, so it actually worked. But good. I think we were lucky.
I mean, lifting your storage sheds are getting lifted.
Yeah.
So you survived your glass breaking, so that was small wins.
Post-storm for us, we were prepared physically, but I have never owned a generator in my life. So when we lost electricity, we didn't have a generator. Turned out some folks that lived directly behind us, their son came down a couple of days later and brought a small generator that could power a fan. So we used that for my wife to try to keep her cool while she recovered. I think it was 6 days, before we got water back. And when we got water back, I boiled water outside, knowing that it would probably be impure. I boiled it for her to take sponge baths, but I used cool water that had not been boiled to pour into the hot water to try to cool it down a little bit so she wouldn't get scalded. So I actually introduced bacteria back into the clean water. And I was the one that was insisting that she take a sponge bath. This will make you feel a lot better. And then when you get done, I'll pour the water over you. And we did that. And we got water into her incision. And then water came back after 6 days. And it was a couple more days. We got electricity. And my first thought was, now we have hot water. So give it a couple hours, let that hot water heater hit up, and go in there and take the longest shower of your life. And stand there and just enjoy the warm water. We didn't think about the fact you can't cook with water, you can't brush your teeth with the water. I never thought about don't take a shower in the water. But that open incision, she stood with her back to the shower, so the water was going directly into the open incision. And at the time, we didn't realize that she was getting a bacterial infection from the impure water.
So the immediacy of the storm and its effects has moved on. The storm is gone, and
Mhm.
little do you guys know that Hurricane Michael is still causing a future indirect effect damage that you didn't even know quietly.
That's exactly
with you the
right.
entire time post-storm that this is happening.
Exactly right. We had survived the storm. Our neighborhood came together fabulously, and everybody pitched in to help everybody else. So we tarped our roofs, and we gave people food and water. We shared indiscriminately. Anybody that needed something, if we had it, we shared it. And we tarped each other's roofs, and we checked on one another day and night. People with generators, long generators in some cases to other people. Everything worked well. And so for 6 or 8 days after the storm, we were survivors as well. And we knew all we have to do is wait until they get the water and the power back on. Yeah. It's all going to be fine. But we did not know about the hidden dangers of Hurricane Michael.
So your sweet blue-eyed high school sweetheart, when did you guys know something was, what was the indicator that, okay, something's wrong?
The 8th or 9th day after the storm, when we had both electricity and water back, her home health care nurse that had helped her through the 3 surgeries and the pulmonary embolisms somehow made her way to our house. We still don't know how she got in because we couldn't get out, but she managed to get in and to come check on her.
She sounds pretty tough herself.
Yeah, she was a remarkable young lady. She made her way in and she checked everything, and she actually checked the incision and didn't note anything, but she noticed that my wife appeared to be very, very fatigued. And she said, look, you guys, if you got someplace you can go, you need to leave. You need to just go somewhere, get some air conditioning, relax for a few days. Yeah. You can come back and clean up later. So we decided at that point that we would, it had been another week and a half after we had spoken to the doctor, and so we thought maybe it would be safe. We have family in Memphis, Tennessee. We have a daughter and her husband and family up there, and a granddaughter that lives a little bit farther north than Memphis, but the granddaughter especially had extra bedrooms, and there was plenty of room for us. So we decided to go to Memphis, but we didn't want to drive 10 hours to get away. So we decided to drive as far as Birmingham and spend the night there. We have a granddaughter that's going to UAB, and we have grandkids pretty much everywhere now.
That's good.
Yeah, but we decided that we would go spend the night in Birmingham, take our granddaughter out to dinner, and maybe a friend or two if she could round somebody up, some college student that might want a free meal.
There you go. They're always around.
There's always somebody, yeah. So we did that. We spent the night, and my wife felt fine. She was fatigued and didn't have the energy she normally has, but I chalked that up to, well, she's tired. We've been doing a lot. Yeah. So we got up the next morning and we said our goodbyes, and we set out from Birmingham to drive to Memphis. And very quickly after we got out of Birmingham, headed north, she started getting ill, and it wasn't very long before she was throwing up, and it was just violent. She was very, very sick. And I had a choice to turn around and go back to Birmingham, and she'd actually been treated for cancer once at UAB, so we knew that hospital. But we also knew if we could make it to Memphis, there are hospitals there, and we had family.
Instead of for a long term.
Exactly. So we went ahead and made the decision to go to Memphis, and took about another 4 hours of driving to get to Memphis. And as I said, she was violently ill on the way up there. And I was in a little bit of a panic. Went directly to our daughter's house, which is a little bit less driving time than it would have been to go to my granddaughter's house. And when my daughter saw her, she checked her temperature, and it's 103.8, I think, at that time, and going up. So we didn't stay there. My daughter and 2 of my granddaughters got on phones and started calling hospitals all over Memphis to find out who had the shortest wait time in the ER.
Smart.
And that was a great help. We found the one with the shortest wait time, punched it into GPS, and got there. And when we took her in, they did triage immediately, and just within a very short amount of time, they had her in intensive care. And after about 5 hours or so of getting stabilized and assessing and finding out, the doctor that had been the admitting doctor, who turned out to be an infectious diseases doctor, came down to speak to me. Yeah, very, very fortunate for us in a lot of different ways. But he came down to talk to me to get some history. And as we were getting to know one another there, He said, well, I'm glad you didn't wait any longer to get here. Why did you wait so long? And I said, well, it's a long drive from Panama City, and we just went through a major hurricane. He didn't know we were from Panama City, so he was concerned about that. And after he had satisfied himself that he had learned a little bit about us, then he said, well, I still want to go back to the thought. You're very fortunate you came in when you did, because I think she was within probably 1 to 4 hours of not surviving. So it was a very close call for her. She was in intensive care almost 2 weeks, and then stepped down from intensive care for about another 3 weeks. And then for the next 3.5 months, we had to go in daily for her to get infusion therapy to feed antibiotics to try to kill the bacteria. It is.
My mom was actually a nurse.
Oh, really?
Career. Yeah, 20 years.
Yeah.
So I'm familiar with the Air Force front and the nurse front.
Yeah.
A little bit of familiarity with like hospital terms and different wards. And I do know intensive care is you don't want to be in intensive care. That's a long time to be in intensive care.
It is. We didn't realize, even after he spoke to me, we didn't realize the gravity of the situation. But we had, he was actually chief of infectious diseases. We had an internal medicine doctor. We had a cardiologist. We had cardiologist. Several different specialists, all coming in to check on her multiple times a day. And they were a fantastic team. But between them, after they had consulted enough and we had gotten to know each other, I think all but one of them actually told me the same thing, that she would not have survived the night had we not gone into the hospital. So we left Birmingham not really knowing there was an issue, and we got up there and found out. It
deteriorated so fast.
God was looking out for us. He sent us where we needed to be. It turned out that they specialize in treating that specific type of bacterial infection at that hospital, and we had no idea.
Wow, that's mind blowing.
Yeah, it really is.
That is really, really mind blowing.
Now, I could go on and on about how good they are. We love our doctors in Panama City. We're friends with several of them. We're both treated here. We get good medical care, but that team up there could honestly not have been better. And it was the doctors, it was the nurses, it was all the specialists, that everybody just really bent over backwards. Part of the reason was because they all spread the word that we were Hurricane Michael survivors.
Isn't that beautiful? And also with the team that you were able to get treated by, I mean, with our healthcare community being as great as they are, they were also buried. And you can't be sure that they would have been able to give her the attention she needed under the circumstances that they were having to provide for a broken town. And so getting care outside of town the way you did probably was the best thing that could.
That's
that
absolutely
nurse
right.
advising you to do that was the best advice she could have gotten.
We've not been able to find her since. We think she may have moved, but we owe her a debt of gratitude, because I'm not certain we would have left at that point, even though we knew that she was lethargic and not responding. We were just.
It took her a little nudge. To get you where you needed.
That's exactly right. We trusted her because we had been dealing with her. Now, I will tell you, there's a side story to her being in the hospital and in intensive care and so forth while we were up there. Prior to Hurricane Michael, we were told that our eldest granddaughter, was pregnant with twins, and that they were going to be born somewhere in late October. And we had been trying to think how we could be there for the birth. We joke in our family, no birth is official unless my wife is there.
No.
So, but knowing that she was still going to be post-surgical recovery, we didn't think there was a way to go. So it took Hurricane Michael to make us go.
Oh.
And while she was still in the hospital up there, our granddaughter was in the adjacent building in the same hospital and gave birth to our twin great-grandsons. Yeah.
And see, as traumatic as this experience is for everyone in our home, and there in every catastrophe and every disaster and every trauma, there's silver linings.
That's exactly
and it's
right.
Stories like this that I think sharing will help the community heal and can be a source of something for other people in different communities that will go through this, no doubt, in the future, to identify with and not feel so alone, and to give a little bit of hope.
That's exactly right. I think that's what has caused us not to be as emotionally devastated by the storm as perhaps other people have been, because we wanted to be there for the birth of those boys. And by the way, those are our 7th and 8th great-grandchildren. We have 10 grandchildren and 8 great-grandchildren now. So we were there for their birth, and because she couldn't leave Memphis for that period of time, I worked for the Navy, and the Navy did a great job. They bent over backwards to let me work up there remotely via laptop and cell phone. And so I was able to stay there for several months. But she spent the first 7 months of those boys' lives there. To begin with, she couldn't help much, but as she got stronger, she was actually able to help much.
And I think even just being there was very, very important.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Awesome. This is the kind of story I was looking for. I'm so grateful that you came and shared today, and I think it's so important to consider your access to healthcare post storms and destruction on this scale, that even after the storm is gone, there's other storms you're going to need to weather, and considering your health, your access to health, whether you need to leave town to get that, what kind of system is still in place in town to help. I mean, those are things to consider during events like this. And
yeah, that's exactly right. We tend to over prepare for most things. So when we saw on the checklist, you should always have 2 weeks worth of medication post storm. We both had 2 months worth of medication, and we ran out. We didn't know we were going to be on
this scale. You really can't imagine, 2 weeks is like the general, but then this storm hits. And I mean, it sounds like you did the best you could, and then afterward thrived with what you were given, and listened to the advice of the professional that came into your vicinity, and I'm just so glad it worked out the way it did for you.
Well, our hope is that people will learn from us. Hurricane, any storm in life, there are a lot of different ways that you can lose your way if you don't pay attention. So when folks like you give us a warning that there's a storm coming in, take it seriously. And not everybody did. I have not always taken it seriously. But look for other ways you can be impacted by the storm like that. We knew that there was a chance we may lose shingles off our roof. We knew there was a chance we may have some damage to our home or some trees blown over. We never thought for a moment that a hurricane could lead to a bacterial infection that could be life-threatening. So just you have to be aware.
Be imaginative.
Exactly right.
You can. And then what I try to tell people is that there's no way to erase complete worry. You're always going to worry, but you can mitigate your stress by being as prepared as you can possibly be, and that'll mitigate some of the worry and the stress of the unknown, as being as prepared as you can be. And even then, you're going to face things that you're not prepared for, but at least you're facing just that. And everything else you're prepared for is a non-issue.
That's exactly right.
You have more room to focus on the unprepared, like the surprise sneak attacks, because you covered all your bases that you are easy to cover.
Yep, I agree with that.
Thank you, Michael Creel, for sharing the story with us today.
It's so glad
that your wife made it out on the other side in such a beautiful way with her grandbabies, and I
thank you.
Really appreciate you sharing.
Yeah, we've been together for 50 years now, and we're about to get used to one another. So
I hope you guys have many, many more years together. Okay. And sans hurricanes.
Exactly right. Thank you so much, Alyssa. Pleasure.